Hey there, I'm Julie Tam, managing broker of LYN Realty in Houston, Texas. Thank you for joining me for Smarter Real Estate, my weekly Wednesday show on YouTube and Facebook. Please subscribe and follow so that you don't miss an episode. Today, we are doing a tour of Greater Houston, and I'm going to start with a smaller subsection of Houston because I would be on here for hours if I gave you a tour of the entire metropolitan area. Before we get started, I want to point out that right now I've got a map of the United States. Of course, you see a little bit of Canada and Mexico as well. For those of you who are more familiar with the U.S. geography, I assume some of you may be watching from overseas as well. And if you're thinking about moving to the US or buying investment properties, this video is for you. I'm going to tell you about different neighborhoods in my city. This is my hometown, and introduce you to kind of some of the amenities and the highlights of them. This is a little bit of a higher level overview. I may be doing some videos in the future where I actually go in more in depth into one neighborhood at a time or a couple of neighborhoods at a time. But we're going to start with this to give people a nice idea and just, a quick overview so that you at least get your bearings straight. So to give you a little bit of history, I was born and raised right here in Houston, Texas, where I live now. I went to Rice University, which is in the heart of Houston as well. And then I moved away several months after I graduated from college and started my TV news anchor and reporter career, which took me to different cities and different states around the country. But I finally landed back in Houston almost 10 years later. And actually, so I've been in TV more than 10 years. I started working in Houston, but then I continued in different cities. So total of over 10 years in TV, but left Houston for less than 10 years and came back, built our current home, semi-custom, and then we are in the process of getting ready to build our next home in Houston as well, when we're in the city limits in both cases. I grew up though in the suburbs in Harris County. I had lived in the city of Houston, I think at some point in my early childhood. I don't even remember now, but the two main homes I grew up in were in Harris County outside the Houston city limits. But for those of you who know Houston, you know that Houston likes to gobble up everything. So even though there are individual municipalities that have their own city hall, police and fire force, all that, police force and fire department, I should say, Houston basically incorporates and considers it Houston. And so even in the county, for example, like Harris County, your address on your envelope will say Houston. Of course, other counties like Fort Bend County will have its own cities like Sugar Land. If you have a Sugar Land address, that's what you'll have on your envelope when you're mailing things. But anyway, so when people talk about Houston, it's really a huge area. So let me go ahead and zoom in and define it for you. So Texas in and of itself is huge. We are larger than several states combined. The Houston metropolitan area, geographically, like land size, is also larger than some states. So you can just imagine. It takes, a good, if you drove from one end of Houston to another, probably like an hour and a half or something like that and no traffic just to get out of the city. That's insane. Maybe not quite that long, but anyway, there's always traffic somewhere. Okay, so this area that you're seeing, more or less, Beaumont is out here on the east side, but other than that, this really is Greater Houston. If you went on to HAR.com, the MLS, Houston Association of Realtors, it also stands for Homes and Rentals, you're going to see listings, really in the far reaches. In a future video or two, I will be talking about the outer suburbs. I'll also be talking about what's outside the kind of inner loop of Houston, but still within the outer loop of Houston. Really, if you look, for those of you who aren't familiar with Houston, this is the 610 loop, which is what we call the inner loop in the center of Houston. And then the Beltway 8, which is a tollway, is the wider kind of outer loop. But there's also 99, which is another tollway that's mostly formed. It doesn't form a complete circle just yet, but it's getting there, and that's like another loop. And so some people live even beyond 99 and they're still considered to be part of Greater Houston. So it is enormous. Okay, as we're shooting this, you can see there's yellow delineating the freeways, and there's a lot of them in Houston, and then a lot of red in the traffic areas. Right now it's just mid-afternoon on a Friday as I'm shooting this, to be aired on a Wednesday. So I want to share with you. So Houston is a unique city. It's the only major city in the United States that does not have zoning. So other cities around Houston, like Sugar Land I mentioned, has zoning. Zoning means there are specific zones designated for industrial, commercial, and residential, and you can't build one or the other, in the wrong zone. But in Houston, there's not. So you could have a car repair shop and then right next to it, a house without any sort of buffer zone between, like some nice shopping center, for example. And so the odd thing is you will also see, a $1 million home next to a shack. There are areas of Houston that are going through gentrification, revitalization, where old homes are being knocked down and new homes built, and you're seeing a lot of price appreciation in the meantime. You're also seeing a phenomenon of larger lots where there may have been just one home that was a 1-story or 2-story older home. And I'll define older in just a second, because Houston's definition of older is totally different from other cities' definitions of older. And so those are getting knocked down to make way for 3, 4, 5, even more, either single family patio homes on small lots without much yard, so mainly just a patio in the front, the side, and or back, or townhomes that are, adjacent, stuck together. They have shared walls, they're attached. Or condo buildings, right? Either 2, 3-story or even mid and high rise condo buildings. So we're seeing this phenomenon, and I mentioned the word old. So unfortunately, Houston does not have a lot of historic preservation. There are some areas that do, like in Heights and Montrose, for example, in town, and some other areas. But for the most part, if the house was built in even as recently as the 1960s or 1950s, it's considered old. I mean, are you kidding me? That's younger than my parents. But by that definition, Houston says it's okay to go ahead and knock down that home and build a new one. So if the home is just 50 years old, it's already considered old. It's time to tear it down. And unfortunately, a lot of these homes are still very livable. They're still mostly structurally sound. Some of them don't even have foundation problems. Some do. So you could clearly, maybe update it and continue to live in it. Some of the homes have been remodeled, even fully remodeled, but the land value is worth more than the house itself. And so someone who has money and wants to come in and build something nicer, like a $1 million or multi-million-dollar home, will come in and do so. Houston inner loop is becoming less and less affordable over time. The suburbs are still much more affordable because they're farther out. People want to be closer into, employment centers, for example. Now, this phenomenon may change a little bit because of the COVID-19 pandemic and a lot of people working from home. So more people are venturing out into the suburbs where they have more amenities, especially people who enjoy biking trails that are peaceful and not really busy with a lot of congestion and traffic. They might have a neighborhood pool and a clubhouse, tennis courts, basketball courts, park, playground, all these things, and not have to go and find a public area for that or get a membership somewhere to go and do those things, like a gym membership, right? If you have a fitness center in your neighborhood, then you're good to go. And so we are seeing people who used to want to live in the city because they work downtown or in the medical center now are starting to decide to venture out. They have more space, more land, and they can even install a swimming pool in their own backyard. Okay, Houston's very hot in the summer. We do have cold weather too, believe it or not. We get quite cold in the winter. It can drop below freezing and even into the mid and lower 20s. We've even had teens during the winter freeze of 2021. But it is definitely extremely hot in the summer, and so people want to be able to cool off in their own backyard. Okay, so right here is essentially downtown, where a lot of these freeways crisscross. You've got I-10, 45, 59, down to 288, and then of course 610 looping all the way around. So in downtown, what you're going to see mostly in terms of real estate these days is your high-rise condos and apartments. So apartments are for people to rent, condos are for people to buy to own, and then they can rent them out as well. And, as you would expect with downtowns, there's more traffic. You have more, just vagrants, people roaming the streets. But you also have a lot of amenities, right? There's Discovery Green, there's Toyota Center where basketball is played, and Minute Maid Park where baseball is played. We have all the professional sports teams in Houston, the Rockets, the Astros. And then you have, of course, a cool downtown underground tunnel system for people to go around and to go to work primarily, but there's also restaurants and shops down there, and it's just kind of a fun thing to do with family or with kids. Or without kids, but anyway. And then there's a lot of good restaurants as well downtown, bars and entertainment venues. And so if you want to be in the heart of everything, it's really a fun place to live. I would say that demographically, people who tend to be younger working professionals will choose to live in those areas because that's just what makes sense. We have one toddler, we have a child, and I just don't see myself living downtown. It's not for everyone, but it's certainly a fun lifestyle. And if you want to be able to just walk around and go to these venues without having to pay for parking, then those are definitely viable options for you. Okay, so looking at east of downtown, this is a really interesting area that's truly on the move. It's called East Downtown, which is abbreviated as EaDo, EaDo, usually capital E and capital D. And East Downtown has been more of a blue collar working class area, but a lot of builders have gone in and bought up these old homes, built in like the 1920s. These are even older homes than the 50s and 60s ones that I mentioned earlier. And they're tearing them down and building those patio homes and also townhomes, really quite nice, but still more affordable than those homes would be on the west side of downtown, which I'll get to in a little bit. So you can still buy things for $200, $300 something $1,000 and on up. Okay. Down on the south side, you have University of Houston. So this whole third ward area is also really transitioning. There, I would say east of 288, you do have a lot of boarded up homes. It's a little bit higher in crime, but again, there is that gentrification going on. So you are getting homes that are being torn down and rebuilt. There are some homes that are existing that are, larger and more stately. You can afford more living in that area, because right on the other side of 288 is the medical center. And the medical center, there's more than that, but we'll start with the medical center, which is immediately to the west of 288. You also have this whole like NRG Park area, the NRG Stadium, the Astrodome, football is played here, major conventions and shows and trade shows and things like that. Different events are held there, concerts. So anyway, that whole stadium, NRG area, plus the medical center area draws a lot of traffic here. Now, the medical center, of course, is a huge employment center for Houston. Houston is about, I would say, 1/3, based on the most recent statistics, oil and gas industry. And medical is another big one up there, as well as now like financial. A lot more tech is happening in Houston. We got, of course, like all the other professions you can imagine in a major city, but medical is definitely up there. And so a lot of people who work in the medical center like to live inside the loop. Now, near the medical center are some really coveted neighborhoods because Hermann Park and this whole area is there with the Houston Zoo, the Miller Outdoor Theater, a lot of these great outdoor type venues, Braise Bayou coming through here. Some of these areas are flood prone because you are close to the bayou, but there's a lot of areas that actually are not in any floodplain. So you can actually live pretty close, to some desirable areas and just be okay. Houston's floodplains are actually very interesting. You'll see them throughout the entire greater area. It's not like, only Southside floods or only a certain area. Okay, this happened to me in a previous video where I had an alarm clock set and then it went off in the middle of my video, so cut me off. These videos are unedited, except for in this case, I didn't want to record the entire first part of the video all over again, so we've spliced it together so I can continue. I was talking about floodplains, so you will have areas, of course, that are right next to a body of water like the bayous, be flood prone, and some of the neighborhoods that are right near it, but then all of a sudden, other areas around it are not in floodplains, and so it is very sporadic. You can have one home that's in a floodplain and the next home not be because it's just really right on the edge. So anyway, that's a topic for another video. So looking at this area, I mentioned about Hermann Park, and this is really the museum district. You've got a lot of the, we've got the natural science, children's, the Holocaust Museum, Museum of Fine Arts. You can see some of these, the Menil collection, all of this, I mean, it's just really good area. Right south of 59 and west of 288 that people love to just go to, and not just tourists, but even locals, to enjoy the museums and some of the outdoor art as well. Rice University, my alma mater, is right in the middle of all of that, right in the heart of it. And one of Houston's most prestigious neighborhoods surrounds Rice University, which is West University. Southside Place is also adjacent to West University. And these are really nice luxury homes. There are some homes that are older, but those lots are super expensive. I don't think you can really even buy a viable lot. Well, I say a lot, or even a lot with a house on it that's livable for like under $600,000 these days. And these could be a really old home, like, 2,000 square feet, and built, like 100 years ago. And people are buying those up to build new homes. Your new construction is really hovering close to like $2 million and on up. And what else can I say about it? Oh, Rice Village, a great shopping area, very fun. If you imagine kind of areas like around, Stanford or up in the Northeast around those universities where you've just got this really quaint, but with modern kind of renovations and updates, a shopping area with restaurants and some conveniences like dry cleaners and shoe repair shops and whatnot, and bookstores. That's what Rice Village is to Rice University. A lot of these really nice, prestigious universities will have this type of shopping area around it. So it makes this West U area and West and Southside Place, this university area, very attractive to people. The homes, it's interesting because you have some lots that are smaller, like about 5,000 square feet is your basic small West U lot. And if you're trying to build there, you really can't go too much above about 3,500 square feet. And there's restrictions on how many square feet you can have on each of the 2 floors and all of that. And of course, there are lots that are larger. We see, 10,000 square foot lots, and even lots bigger than that, up to 20,000 square feet as well. And so anyway, that is kind of that area in a nutshell. Now, if we look, okay, so Braisewood Place is another one adjacent to Southside Place, and also Bel Air, City of Bel Air. City of Bel Air, part of it is inside the loop and part of it's outside the loop. And that is a really desirable municipality in and of itself. It has a great vibe to it. It's got a lot of the old homes being torn down, new homes being built. But City of Bel Air, most of it is already quite nice. So it's not like some other neighborhoods that I'll touch on and that I've already touched on where they're in the process of gentrifying. I mean, Bel Air is already there. It's nice and posh. And so those older homes are already well maintained for the most part, taken care of. They're not like these shacks and awful things, where you're trying to remove the seedy element of the neighborhood. I mean, Bel Air is already there. And same thing with the older homes in West U. I mean, these are like established homes, mostly are, they're taken care of and maintained well, and they're on the up and up. So that's just a great area overall. Okay, so we've looked at this kind of south of 59, southwest quadrant of 610 essentially. I don't want to miss talking about, oh no, never mind. I talked about that. Okay, let's go north of 59. We have some really Tony neighborhoods up here. I'll start close to the Museum District because a lot of people combine Museum District with Montrose. So this is the Montrose area. Montrose area has always been considered kind of a colorful area, a diverse area. Actually, the best restaurants are in Montrose. I will tell you that. The ones that are ranked really high and that win those top whatever competitions and that are featured in media, those are in Montrose. It's a colorful area, just a lot going on, a very walkable area, just quirky shops and restaurants and things. So it definitely has its own personality. Now, over here, you may have heard of the famed River Oaks neighborhood. You're going to see the word memorial if you can see. I'm not really sure how clear this is on the camera. But anyway, before we talk about Memorial, River Oaks, of course, that is the grand dam of all Houston neighborhoods. The rich and famous live there. It is so expensive. For Christmas lights, you want to drive through River Oaks and look at those. So yes, that is one of the most expensive zip codes in the country, in fact. These homes tend to be on larger lots. There are some that are not so big, but some are just sprawling lots. I mean, it would look like, half a block, like a normal street, right? But this is River Oaks we're talking about. Okay, so moving on a little bit closer in, not all the way to downtown, but kind of the outskirts of River Oaks is River Oaks Shopping District, which is super posh with the restaurants and the retailers, but it's more affordable. And there are condos and townhomes there and houses that are not quite as expensive as River Oaks proper. Okay, and let's see. Up here, we have the Washington Corridor, which really leads you right into downtown. That's an area that's being gentrified. It is... because it's closer into downtown, it has a slightly different vibe than, say, up over here, where you've got Rice Military and the Heights. So Rice Military, I would say, is almost completely, gentrified. Those homes look really nice. Heights has a lot already that's done, all these numbered streets like 20th and whatever, and you've got in the Heights area, kind of the northwest quadrant, there's some other like Lazy Brook, Timber Grove adjacent to it. But yeah, Heights is one of the most desirable neighborhoods in the country, really. It has a lot of older Victorian style homes and new also Victorian style homes. They purposely build like that. And because of some of the historic preservation, in some cases, these homes, they have to get permission to change the outside. And so you've got also brand new homes, similar to some of the other areas, where it's like 3 and 4 stories, smaller lots, patio homes. Some of them you'll have cookie cutter, like 3-4 homes in a row that all look the same, or even more homes than that. But yeah, Heights is a colorful area. Again, some good restaurants and shops, eclectic, just has that, it's a fun vibe. But people who like the Heights, that is their kind of place. It's not my vibe, but people who like it, they really like it. Okay, so back down here, we talked about Memorial. This is Memorial Park. It is a huge urban park. I think it might be the biggest. I'm not sure if this is bigger or Hermann Park, but in terms of in Houston, and it's right adjacent to the River Oaks area. You've got Memorial is kind of a larger area. Some parts of it are outside the 610 loop and even outside the Beltway. So we'll talk about those in another video, but the Memorial Park and close in areas are the ones that are inside the 610 loop. And they're of course going to be expensive because stuff inside the loop is more expensive, all else being equal typically than the farther out you go. Okay, and then down here we have Upper Kirby, Greenway Plaza, Afton Oaks, Royden Oaks. These are kind of hip feeder areas to River Oaks and Westview. It kind of sits in between, a little bit more affordable than the River Oaks and Westview neighborhoods, but still very expensive. You do have some townhomes and patio homes, single family homes that you can buy that are going to be more affordable than homes on larger lots. But it's near some great shopping and some of the best fine dining, even some casual dining. But you've got Highland Village, River Oaks District. Those are places I love to go to. I like to go to my mom and pop restaurants too, so not just high end, trust me. But anyway, there's just a lot going on. Central Market is there, which is a lot of people's favorite grocery store. It's like a maze, so it's really not my thing. I feel like people go crazy in there and just go around and hit other people with shopping carts. Every time I go there, I get hit with a shopping cart, at least one shopping cart. So it's not it's not really my choice of grocery store, but it's a fun store to go to. So anyway, but yes, this is kind of Houston inner loop in a nutshell. Oh, you know what? I do not want to forget up here too. North Side, Cashmere Gardens, this whole area, 5th Ward, really being gentrified. Okay, like I grew up here. I'm not shy about my age. I'm gonna be 40 this year, and so I've been in Houston since the early 80s. And so I've really seen this change a lot. I remember we used to go up to a farmer's market in this area, and there's, still that kind of thing going on. And the homes were, more run down and whatnot. And there are still those types of homes there, but again, they're getting torn down just, pretty rapidly, and new ones being built. And so Houston is always transforming. If you visit Houston and then you wait 5 years and come back, the areas that you visit, some areas that are undergoing this type of gentrification, are going to be so different, you won't even necessarily recognize it. All of a sudden, these old homes that were on certain streets are gone, and new homes built in their place. The streetscape can look totally different. So it's really quite incredible. Okay, so yes, come back and watch more, because I will be going over what's outside the 610 loop and inside the Beltway 8, some really exciting areas as well. Very interesting different neighborhoods in a future video. And then in another future video, we'll venture outside the Beltway and look at all these little suburbs, their own municipalities and cities like Spring and Tomball and Sugarland, Pearland, League City, Baytown. Houston goes all the way down to Galveston, folks. This is part of our market area of Greater Houston. So again, very sprawling, so much to learn and see. If you have any questions about my beloved city, please don't hesitate to reach out in a private message or by making a comment. I'd love to get your feedback, ideas for future episodes, and also any suggestions. So, questions, that's what I meant to say. So anyway, thank you for watching. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you on a future show of Smarter Real Estate, weekly on Wednesdays. I'm Julie Tam, managing broker of LYN Realty in Houston, Texas, signing off. Bye-bye now.